right, we have one last thing to set up before we dive into the next section. So what I want you to do is we're going to be utilizing a number of labs for the course. Some of them we've built as demonstrations to help you really understand vulnerabilities without the added complexity of large applications, and some of them open source. So the first thing I want you to do is come to Google. Oops, we'll switch off our proxy. And then we'll search for crappy API, GitHub. And you can see this OWASP/crappy, completely ridiculous API. And I want you to come into here and then click code and then click this copy button. So this is going to click the link to the .git file. Come back to your terminal, and here we're in the home directory. So, whoops, no, we're not. We're in the root directory. Now we're in the home directory. And what I like to do is I don't like to dump loads of stuff in here. So I'm just going to make a directory called labs and cd labs. The rest of the labs that we're going to be using as part of the course, you'll see them as we go, and then you'll be able to pull them in, unzip them, and run them. So the only one we need to get up and running with is the crappy application for today. So git clone and then paste, and we'll give this a minute to download the application. And before we can run this application, what we need to do is we need to install Docker.io and Docker Compose. So let's just clear this, and we'll just do sudo apt install docker.io, and we'll hit yes. You can also give it the -y flag to automatically hit yes, and this will take a minute to install. Now, if you get this error, this is quite easy to solve. So you can see that it gives us a error message saying unable to fetch some archives, maybe run sudo apt-get update or try with fix missing. So we'll sudo apt update -- fix missing. Give this a minute to run. And now we can sudo apt install docker.io. Yes. So here we get there are services installed on your system which need to be restarted. I'm just going to go with yes. I don't mind it restarting services. All right. And the next one we need is sudo apt install docker compose. And we'll go with yes. And which services should be restarted? I'm just going to hit enter to say okay. And then we should be good to go. Now we do get a little pop-up in the top right-hand corner saying that, hey, we need to restart. So I'm just going to go ahead and restart my guest. And we can log ourselves back in. Come back to the terminal, cd labs, cd crappy. And for this one, most of the labs, you'll just need to cd into the folder where the application is and sudo docker compose up. You'll see this in the following sections. But for crappy, we need to come into deploy/docker. And then you can see the docker compose files are here. So sudo docker -compose up. And this is going to take a little while to download everything it needs and spin up the application. The first time you do it, it'll take, a little bit of time, but the next time you do it, because it doesn't need to download everything from the internet, it should spin up much, much faster. So within, 20, 30 seconds, maybe. All right, so now it looks like everything is up and running. So we're going to come back into Firefox. And we're going to go to localhost 8888. And we get our login page. So if you don't see this just yet, make sure that everything is up and running. Usually you'll see crappy web requests like health checks and things. Give it a little bit more time. Otherwise, maybe spin it down again and try once more. So this is the main login page for the application that we'll be using throughout the course. And of course, we'll be using other applications as well. And just a heads up, this runs on 8888, so don't forget that. And the other endpoint that you'll need is 8025 as well. So this is the mail server that's connected to the application. So you'll see that once you log in, you'll get an email with some stuff. This is how you actually read the contents of that email. So that's really, really important. And if I close this and I come back to Docker, and if I just hit Control-C, it's going to gracefully stop. We can force stop by hitting Control-C again, but better to let it spin down in its own time. Now, one other thing that I wanted to show you while it's doing that is if I come back into the labs folder, is that if we're running lots of different Docker containers, sometimes your file system can become full with Docker files. And if you have this problem and you want to clean out all of your old containers, I have a script to do that for you. So this is also included in the text notes as part of this section, so you can see it there. But here I'm just going to vim cleanup.sh insert, and here you can see it stops all of the Docker containers, removes them all, and then removes all the volumes, etc., etc. So if I just save this, chmod +x, you might not need this at all, but just in case, like I say, if Docker's filling up your whole file system, then you might want to remove the ones that you're not using anymore and rebuild the ones that you're using going forward. Just know if you've been running other applications with Docker on your file system, this will remove all of them. So you'll still have, for example, the crappy application here, but when you sudo docker compose up, it will rebuild the application, if that makes sense. So here, I'm just going to make sure that this is finished, which it is, and then sudo /cleanup.sh, and you can see that it's cleaned up everything. So the MongoDB, Postgres data, this was all from the crappy application. And that's it for this section. So you should be all set up and ready to go, and I'll see you in the next video.